What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck with you. Buck, what is going on, man?
It's a lot, DJ. There's a lot going on. We got coaching moves all over. We had a late general manager dismissal. So many things to talk about ahead of conference championship weekend. It's the championship weekend. And before we can even get to that, we got to talk about so many people swapping chairs, having great opportunity.
Yeah, we have an episode out. I think that was out Tuesday, I want to say, where we went through, some of the key players in these conference championship games. So if you're looking for the episode and you thought this is the one where we're going to, spend a bunch of time previewing the basically the semifinals of the NFL coming up, go back, listen to the Tuesday episode. You'll get all that information. This is more about what's going on, the changes that are taking place, and the new direction for franchises, which I was not planning on starting here, but because I didn't know this was going to happen until the last 24 hours. But your Jags, we were wondering who the heck the head coach was going to be, and now it looks like they're looking for someone else as well.
Yeah, DJ, this is such a weird and unique process, right? So when you have the regular season, and unfortunately they call it Black Monday, right? Black Monday is the day after the regular season. You see a bunch of coaches dismissed. Sometimes you see general managers also dismissed at that time. The Jaguars made a decision to move on from Doug Peterson, but they had a press conference shortly thereafter with Shad Khan and Trent Baalke, where it appeared that Trent Baalke was going to be in place as general manager. All of the language, everything that Shad had said is that he felt like Trent had done a good job. He felt that he was one of the ones that was guiding him over the decision-making process. And when pressed on that by a reporter who said, well, what if a new coach comes in and doesn't want Baalke as the general manager? Would you move on from that? And he the owner, Khan, was taken aback by that, was like, I mean, maybe, but that kind of seems crazy. I don't want to run basically two processes at the same time. Well, now, almost a month later, you make a move after maybe there was some pushback from the hot candidates in terms of whether they wanted to work with the incumbent general manager or not. Khan makes the move. And the thing that you wonder when you make the move now is, okay, you make the move, but is there a coaching candidate worthy of giving that kind of power to? Yeah, and so it's a backwards process. And what I would say that now that you're in it, this is an opportunity to completely reset the organization. So rather than rush to get the coach and everything, why don't you pause, reset, reflect on what it is that you want the franchise to be, and then start building the pieces of the puzzle that way. You can't worry about like winning the press conference or whatever. The Super Bowl's a couple weeks away. Like take your time and get the thing right, because DJ, I don't know, is this head coach hired the GM hired the head coach, whatever it is, I think it requires you to pause for a minute, kind of gather all the troops together and lay out a plan for how you want to approach this.
Yeah, and I think there's a report that came out that said they've got 2 in-person interviews coming up. Salah's one of them. I think Patrick Graham, I want to say, is the other one coming in. But they made a point that, these are not the 2 finalists, that there's more. And it sounds like Joe Brady's name with the Bills could be someone they'd want to visit with in person. And then Kellen Moore with the Eagles would be another that they'd be interested in talking to. So to me, I'm with you, Buck. I think you reset, you kind of widen the search a little bit. Look, the college season's over too. So if there's, a Matt Campbell or somebody that you're interested in talking to, I know it didn't go well on the Urban Meyer front. So maybe that precludes them from doing that. But at least I try to talk to anybody you can talk to.
Okay, so here's one scenario that everyone should consider and just think about this way. So if you felt good, taking Shad Khan's words in terms of he felt like the process, they felt like they were good players on the roster and those things. So now what you have to do when you're doing your self-check, is it the person or the process that you didn't like? Was it you didn't necessarily like Trent Baalke, but you like the process, because then that puts interim general manager Ethan Watt in play to stay to help you throughout this process as you find a coach. Like you like the process, but maybe it was toxic at the top based on the way people felt about the previous general manager. So that could also be an option where you kind of keep things the same because you like the process, but you had to swap out the things at the top to make it a job that's more attractive to people. The other part, and this is the danger that owners can step into, is too often in the process, you hear people say, I want an offensive or a defensive guy. And ultimately, it needs to be a guy that is ready to be the head coach. Because while it is great to have an offensive coordinator who can bring his playbook and that playbook stays consistent with the quarterback. You have to make sure that if you go that route, one, he can handle the nature of the job, or you're hiring him basically as an offensive coordinator plus, and then your job is to make sure that the staffing allows him to be able to grow into the head coaching part of the job. Much like Sean McVay, when he first took over the Rams, Wade Phillips was the defensive coordinator. So now you not only have a defensive coordinator, but you have a defensive coordinator who has been a head coach. So you can entrust him to handle that side of the team while you're locked in on the offense and kind of learning how to manage the entire thing. I think there are a lot of little dominoes that are in play when you're hiring the head coach and the scenarios that can run to make one candidate a better candidate than the other.
See if this surprises you, because it did surprise me a little bit. And you're with the Jags, so you see them all the time. And I don't want to put you in a bad spot here, but this person brought up, because I said, I wonder if things would have been different. With Ben Johnson had Trent Baalke already been gone, and would that have opened up that opportunity there? Blah blah blah. And this is a coach who said, "Well, he said he was talking to some other coaches about it, and they thought, I don't know, you've got fixes that need to be done for both quarterbacks, and they felt like Caleb might be an easier fix than Trevor." And I was like, whoa. Like that's where the at least the perception around the league is that like Trevor's somewhat broken. Like Trevor has to be put back together and fixed. And it's not something that they think is going to be, snap your fingers, we get some good fancy plays in here and then off we go. Which kind of took me back, but you see it every week. I just go back to what Trevor was coming out. I was there, we beat the Chargers in the playoffs and thought his career was just on a rocket ship. Now I know he's had injuries and I know they didn't win ball games, but I was like, gosh darn, I didn't think Trevor being broken like that, but that's the perception from some around the league.
Well, let's be true. My job here on the podcast is to be fully transparent and to be really honest about my thoughts on what I've seen from Trevor and the team and those things. Trevor Lawrence will be on his third head coach within 5 years. Multiple play callers or multiple voices in his head, multiple systems that he's had to play in. I would say that for a player who has won his entire life, high school, because we did the 360 on Trevor Lawrence, we talked to the people around him and they talked about how he was. Dabo Swinney, who we've talked to and what we watched at Clemson as he won a natty very early in his career, stepping in right after Deshaun Watson and taking that team to an even higher level. To me, I would say that Trevor might have lost some of the confidence because the team has lost a lot. He has had to shoulder probably more than a young franchise quarterback should shoulder if we're trying to develop the quarterback the right way. And can I confidently say that he felt the love and support of everybody that has been pouring into him? Probably not. So the first thing that you have to do when it comes to helping Trevor play at his best, he has to know that you're really there for him, that your relationship is not just transactional, that is transformational because you really believe in him. Because when I look at the guys, and DJ, some of this comes from coaching high school, and some of this comes from knowing and watching these kids that I've seen at the opening when they were 17, 18, and watching them grow up into young men. Sometimes they need the nurturing part of it. Doesn't mean that they can't be coached hard, but it's no different than a parent and the kid. They have to know that you're really about them, that you really care about them, and then they can take the coaching and going on. So yeah, when you talk about broken, yes, you got to repair his confidence on top of like working on some mechanical flaws. But I think if the coach that comes in there and day one, he tells Trevor, you're my guy, I'm going to do everything in my power as I'm building this team to make sure that I do right by you. But in turn, here's what I need from you.
Yeah.
Leadership, work ethic, toughness, all that, which he already has. If you can create that relationship, you'll see the best Trevor that you can see. Because like, I love the kid. I love the guy that he is. I think he has to have someone that pours into him and challenges him to pour into the team and give back to the coaches the same way.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting point of who they can go out and find, who can hopefully, and let's be real, like it's hard to have a chance when you don't have any stability. So let's hope that they get it right. Not only because I want Bucky to watch good football week in and week out, who's on the broadcast. But
But
I want
will
it
say
for I
this.
want it for Trevor. I want some continuity there to see what he can do.
The parallel that I always make is Trevor Lawrence reminds me of what Jared Goff was when he first stepped into Detroit. I think it's a
Oh,
very
okay.
similar project. I
Yeah.
think the same things that helped Jared Goff get up and going will be the same things that would help Trevor Lawrence get going. So it's not only the coaching, it's the construction of the team. When you look at what
Offensive
Jared Goff
line, man.
benefit, offensive line, run game, dynamic weapons around him. And much like Jared can be vocal or whatever, and Trevor can be vocal, but that's not their normal MO.
Yeah, that's not his nature.
You need to surround them with guys who already have the dog in them. So it's less about him getting them ready. It's more about him matching their competitive energy. If you have that, then you have a lot of success. But I think it's very similar to the Jared Goff project when Jared arrived in Detroit years ago.
Yeah, well, it's a big challenge ahead of the Jags right now. Get this thing right, and there are some good pieces there on that roster, and see if they can get this thing up and running. Let's get to a couple of the hires here. We mentioned him there just for a second. Ben Johnson going to the Bears. Thought it was great. I mean, I don't know, press conferences, it doesn't matter. I've seen guys win and lose press conferences. It really doesn't have anything to do with whether you're going to be successful or not. But I liked what I heard, and specifically, I liked the fact that he talked about, this is not my offense from Detroit, and we just dropped the playbook off for these players. We take this thing down to the studs. We're going to study our quarterback, what he likes, what he doesn't like, and we're going to build both the playbook and the roster around him. And I thought that was pretty smart. That shows a humility and not the arrogance of just, hey, these are magic plays. I'm just going to drop them in here and we'll go win games.
DJ, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to quarterbacks and really when it comes to a team. Just because you had success one way in Detroit doesn't mean that you can replicate that success in Chicago. You have to look at what you have, meaning you have to do a deep dive on the roster that you inherit. You have to look at what you could potentially add quickly, and then you have to build it out with the quarterback in mind. That's one thing that I learned from Coach Holmgren during my time with him in Green Bay as a player, but also working with him in Seattle. It is about the quarterback, and it's about meeting the quarterback where he's at, but pushing him to get to where you want him to go. And with Ben Johnson coming over, I would say the thing that impressed me the most was when he stepped into the building and he talked to everyone in the building. And he challenged everybody that the culture is about serving the players. How can we best serve the players? And then it was about building the culture of the team. We can talk about the fancy X's and O's, but we know if you listen to the conversation coming out of Chicago after the dismissal, they talked about needing discipline, structure, culture, all of those things. Before we can even think about the X's and O's, you got to get the right Jimmys and Joes, and then you got to put them in the right environment for them to be at their best when it's time to take the field.
I'm just I'm looking at the free agents for the Lions, because we've talked about it with Dan Quinn, right? Dan Quinn took guys he was familiar with and guys that fit. And so I'm looking through there. First of all, Teddy Bridgewater in the backup capacity, someone who could
love it, right?
The offense would be an interesting one. Marcus Davenport was hurt. Carlton Davis, on the other side of the ball, so that doesn't really relate as much. Going through the rest of these guys here, a lot of defensive players for the Lions that are up. Tim Patrick on offense is a potential someone. Dan Skipper's up. Let's see, who else do we got here? Here you go. This is the one. Kevin Zeitler.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Zeitler is a need for the Bears at guard. Come in and give them an immediate upgrade. He knows the system and he can spread the gospel. He can spread the Ben Johnson gospel. So if I was going to make one prediction off free agency, off of one hire, I would say Kevin Zeitler to the Bears, and you weaken a team in the division on top of that.
Yeah, and I think some of those defensive players, depending on who he hires as his coordinator, remember, they talked about Dennis Allen. Allen, who was the defensive back coach under Dennis Allen in New Orleans for a long time. Aaron Glenn, college teammates. So if you want some of the stuff, you can have some of the secret sauce by bringing some of those Detroit players. If Dennis Allen is installed as your coordinator, there will be some similarities and carryovers that work. But yeah, I think in Chicago, and he talked about it being a sleeping giant. I think the number one thing that the Chicago Bears have to do is they have to figure out who are they in terms of their identity and how it relates to this division. This division is tough. Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay. There's a certain way that you have to play to be able to knock off your division rivals. But yeah, I think bringing over some cultural enhancers, guys that know the culture and want to do it, I think you certainly can benefit from that in Chicago.
I mean, look, just right out of the gate, they've just made the hire, all the different guys that they had available to them. I thought, and we'll see how it goes, but I thought this was the perfect hire for them, man, for a multitude of reasons. I just think this is going to give you, what it's going to give you? It's going to give you a chance to evaluate Caleb. And Caleb did some great things last year, and I still 1,000% believe in Caleb's ability. But he needs to be coached. He needs to be coached hard, which I believe Caleb even said.
Yeah,
that he craves that. He's going to need that because he's got to clean up some stuff. And then he needs somebody to continuity-wise so they can grow together.
Yeah, and I will say this, like, people don't get it twisted when you look at Ben Johnson with the play card. I have heard that when it comes to the quarterback, he coaches them hard. And that it's going to be really important that the guy who's the quarterback coach is a buffer between him and Caleb at times, because he is going to demand that Caleb is precise and consistent in all of the things that are really important about quarterback. But I also love this because as much as people talk about Ben Johnson and the other stuff, right? Normally when we talk about play callers and those things, it's always about the passing game. I think it's his understanding of the running game and the need to run the football and how it opens up things for the quarterback in the passing game. To me, that's really where the secret sauce is. Can the Bears establish a physical presence on the ground with a dynamic running game that makes the game easy for Caleb when it comes to throwing the ball? All those things working in place. But yeah, Ben Johnson is going to coach Caleb hard. And so you just have to understand that when you're Caleb, that he's going to challenge you so you can grow and become the player that many envision you becoming.
Chicago picks 10 in the draft. They also have an extra second rounder from Carolina. So they pick 10, 39, 41, 72. So 4 picks in the top 72. And as next week we will start. I've got a mock draft coming out this weekend or Monday, and then I've got top 50 coming out next week. So we'll start getting into the draft class, and that'll be a heavy portion of the pod as we transition to the spring here. But I think what early look at this thing, you want to go get some interior offensive line help, you can find it. You want some edge rush defense to add to what you already have. Bam, it's out there. So you want to get a running back with some big time juice to complement, DeAndre Swift, wherever you want to throw back there. Got you. Like there's ways to help this team. So I'm excited. I'm excited, Buck, for this transition when we start getting into the draft stuff a little bit more. But before go ahead.
No, I think you're onto something in terms of the dynamic running back. I think his experience coming from Detroit with the 2 running back system, I think you definitely want to kind of carry that over when you get to
Ravion Henderson. Sorry,
maybe
cough.
Maybe
something came out. All right, Buck. We talked about this. He was going to get a job, and we were excited for it because we both felt like he was ready. Someone you've known for a long time, someone I've respected from afar. I love the Jets hire Aaron Glenn, man.
Yeah, so AG getting the gig. And so not only are we classmates in terms of the draft, but we've done so many different things together. So watching him grow, not only as a player, but then watching him grow as a coach. DJ, we had a chance to coach together at the opening years ago. And I can tell you right now, the things that you've seen on Aaron Glenn and Hard Knocks, that's who he is, man. He coaches hard. He is not afraid of confrontation. He understands the importance of culture. But here's what I will say about Aaron and AG, why I'm really optimistic about it working. If you know his story about how he got into the business after playing, very successful, made a lot of money playing, had successful business ventures outside of it. But he started at the bottom, DJ, when it came to it. Started as a scout, did some scouting on the road, made his way as an assistant DB coach, then a DB coach before becoming a coordinator and those things. And he was very intentional about the way that he went about it because he wanted to learn all aspects of the process in the organization. Now he has an opportunity to be a head coach. Remember, Aaron Glenn played for Bill Parcells in New York. He has an edginess to him that is very reminiscent of what Bill Parcells brought to the Jets when he quickly flipped them from being a 1-15 team to a team that made it to the AFC Championship game. Just like Dan Campbell also worked up under Bill Parcells. There's going to be an edginess to this team because it's going to be built in a blue-collar fashion. And yeah, they got to find a quarterback and all that, but at least he inherits a defense that has some pieces where you can win on one side of the ball. You have some intriguing weapons on offense that you can build around Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, some of the other young guys that you've added to the offensive line. To me, the Jets need a strong identity and they need a strong coach that's going to stick to identity. So I think there's a lot that he can bring as a first-time head coach in New York.
I think the toughness and the tenacity that you hit on it. And look, they got to try and get the quarterback thing squared away. But this roster, and everybody knows, my relationship with Joe Douglas, and it didn't work out there. They didn't win enough games, and Joe would admit that. There's a lot of talent on that roster. They have
100%.
a lot of pieces in place. And I think getting kind of the right leader there with Aaron Glenn, if he can get the right staff, and they can just have a good offseason, and a good offseason, Buck, and they have enough. They have enough to win 10 games, man.
Not flashy,
really
but I think the New York Jets need to embrace who they are. Like we talk about the team being reflective of the city. Look, the Jets have to get out of this business of feeling like they have to be this high-flying, explosive offense. They need to be a gritty, blue-collar team. They need to embrace the city. They need to be a team that when they've been at their best, that's the kind of teams that they've had. Physical, rough, rugged, tough, all of those things. And I'm not saying that there has to be a throwback team that we saw play in the 80s, but they need to embody some of the toughness that you see in Western New York with the Buffalo Bills. Because for all the things that we get excited about the offense of the Buffalo Bills, when you really break them down, they are a reflection of the city of Buffalo and Sean McDermott. They are a blue-collar team, and you're going to have to outwork them and outlast them to beat them. The Jets are going to have to do the same thing. And the pieces are in place there. And I think with Aaron coming over from Detroit and seeing how they did it in Detroit, I think the blueprint is very familiar. Also know this, Dan Campbell played in Detroit, so it was really special to him to rebuild Detroit.
Yeah, it's personal.
Aaron Glenn being drafted and playing in New York, it will be very personal to him to make sure that he gets this team up and going.
A couple more things here. Josh McDaniels is going to be the OC, which I like that familiarity there with Mike Vrabel. I think he'll marry well with Drake May. So I like that hire. I think there's continuity in the relationship between the head coach and the coordinator. I'm all for that, and making it as a consistent messaging, all that stuff. They believe the same things. I like that move. And then the one I want to get to you on is Spytek. So John Spytek, guy we've known forever, who's really, really good in personnel and has been around some great organizations, including winning a Super Bowl in Denver, and then spending a bunch of time in Tampa, winning a Super Bowl there, but also had spent time in Philly. He's been in Cleveland. He's been around. But I wanted to go to, and this is with Jason Light and Spytek, both having spent time in Philadelphia, a part of their journey. Jason's, got Super Bowls from New England as well. And was a part of, a great group there in Arizona. But the foundational of like core beliefs here with Spytek, I was looking through the draft. So think about Philly. What does Philly do every year, Buck?
Invest in the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Well, let's see. Tampa. Let's go through Tampa's last first round picks. 24, Graham Barton, center. Kalijah Cansey, D tackle, Pittsburgh. Logan Hall, D tackle, Houston. Joe Tryon, Shoenka now, defensive end, Washington. Tristan Wirfs, tackle, Iowa. Like every single year.
Not hard, DJ.
Not hard, man.
Talk
just
about
invest
it, man.
in the line of scrimmage.
Not hard. You invest in the line of scrimmage. It always gives you an opportunity to win and win at the highest level. You want to beat people up at the line of scrimmage. And even when you're not great, because let's be honest, like Tampa wasn't a great team because they had a lot of injuries. But because they could dominate the line of scrimmage, DJ, they win a division, they go to the playoffs. And they represent themselves very well. And in this league that is super competitive and parity is really paramount, you just want to have an opportunity to get to 10 every year. And that's what you're able to do when you invest in the trenches.
This feels like to me, and think about also Tampa finding that interim, quote unquote bridge quarterback they hit a home run on with Baker, who ended up being more than a bridge quarterback. Spytek going with Tom Brady in with the Raiders, and where they're picking in the draft, they're not going to reach for a quarterback, Buck. They're going to take an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman in the first round, and then they're going to turn around and they're going to ask Tom Brady to do his homework on all these middle tier quarterbacks, whether that's Kyle McCord, whether that's Will Howard, whether that's Jackson Dart, whatever your flavor is. But that's a great assignment for Tom Brady as your new part owner, as the greatest quarterback of all time. Tom, can you find us one on day 2? Find us a quarterback that we can just rock with for the next couple years until we can get the guy that we ultimately love.
And so, and we say this every year, but I really want people to, if you're a Raiders fan and you opting for that approach, I think it requires a long range thought process for the fan base to not get overly excited or not get too high or too low if the mid-range quarterback that you're leaning on doesn't give you franchise quality play right away.
Well, it could be a veteran too. That's what I'm getting to too. It could be
veteran. So
second, third round pick or a veteran.
Yeah. So as you're building this out, we've seen it, man. It's more important to get the team right. So as we've talked about, you can drop the quarterback in. Because if the franchise quarterback isn't there, and every year the franchise quarterback is not going to be available in the draft or through free agency. So you got to figure out a way to build your team. And the best way to build your team is to take the assets that are available to get you enough blue chip players so you can win the game.
Yeah. No, I just think, man, you can't go wrong. Like if you just keep building up the line of scrimmage, it's like a field of dreams, right? If you build it, it will come. You know what I mean? Just build that up. And then it just buys you time to find that right guy. Don't force it. And that's going to be what this draft is about to me at the quarterback position is who's going to force it? Who's going to try and force somebody a little higher than they should? And who's going to be patient and say, you know what? We're going to try and build this thing up. And then we're just going to go boop, drop him in right after it's all built.
Oh, I mean, that's so much of it. Like the importance of being able to get the right guys and make sure that you build the team the right way. And as you talk about Spytek and his experience building in Tampa, line of scrimmage, there are a lot of line of scrimmage guys that you can lean on in this draft. So when in doubt, take someone on the front line and to give you a chance to come out of the draft with some people that can help you right away.
Yep. It's going to be fun. Good for him too. He's worked for a long time. He's a good dude. Very well respected. So excited for him. Excited to see who the Jets are going to hire as their general manager. Excited to see who the Jags are going to hire as their GM. So, it's or Barganzi got the GM job. I don't know if we congratulated him yet. Congrats.
How about that? Yeah.
Tennessee.
Yeah. That's great for him.
Who's been at it for a long time and has, I always feel like, we say all these guys are respected and people say, oh, you say that about everybody. Well, yeah, because it's hard. It's hard to stay in this thing for a long time and work your way up and wait your turn and good for them. Always excited for guys to get that chair.
Look, man, 18 years is a long time to apply your trade. And so it's the patience and the persistence to keep doing it and working, doing the best job that you can do in the role and responsibility that you have until someone gives you an opportunity to do more. So congrats to him. Can't wait to see what it looks like.
Yeah, no, excited for him. All right, well, this is fun. We got a chance to jump into some of the changes that have taken place. Again, more changes coming. We'll have those for you, and we're getting ready to shift into draft gear, and it's going to be full speed ahead, Buck, as we go into the offseason. I will say, man, if you need a defensive tackle, defensive end, need a running back, you need a tight end, you're going to love this draft, man.
So it's so funny. We always talk about the league coming full circle. We're back to line of scrimmage players. We're back to old school football being in play. And some teams are going to have to take advantage of those players that are available until they can find some of the marquee pieces that you definitely want down the line.
Yep, for sure. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We appreciate you guys hanging with us. We will see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.